friends.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Very glad to meet all of you. And I'm looking forward to having a conversation.
Same here. Same here. Oh, yeah. I think we'll have to wait for a couple of minutes because
Sure. Take your time. Take your time.
Probably it is 9:30 a.m. 9:30 a.m. there.
Yes. Almost.
Okay.
In about 9:27 to be precise.
Okay.
Yeah. So how was the conference in the I mean all night for me. So
it was very, very interesting. 3 speakers spoke well, and there was a lot of participation from the participants also, members. A lot of dialogue, in fact.
all right. Yeah, I feel very bad. I usually listen to people and then I formulate my argument, but unfortunately that wasn't possible. So I'm not sure I'm gonna say what you're looking for. It's very new to me. So I will just talk what comes to my mind, and I have a basic structure from various things that I teach and I think about. So we'll see.
Yeah. How's the COVID situation there, madam?
Well, we are pretty much, I am very close to the city. I live about an hour from New York City. So it's been extremely bad. Things have started to get a little better now. But I have been teaching all my classes online. And we just finished. My semester just ended. But yeah, it has been absolutely devastating. Very bad situation.
See that. And the topic itself is interesting. When I looked at the topic, it is communication is communion, piercing the veil of simulacra in the digital age. I'm very keen to know, what exactly are you talking about?
Well, that's a secret. So you'll find out. Yeah.
Okay, our chairman, Professor Nagarna sir, has joined us. Sir, welcome to this session. The speaker is online, Professor Neela Bhattacharya. Professor Nagarna sir has joined us, madam.
Okay, hello, yes. I have communicated via email.
Yeah.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Good day, good evening.
No, sir, it is good morning to her, sir. Yeah. It is good morning.
Yeah, very good
That's
morning.
all right. That's okay.
that is what the whole idea is all about, right?
Yeah.
When we are talking of this communication skills, communication, at one part of the country it is good evening and other part it is good morning.
Right.
This is what we have to cope up with, and this is the challenge. We are very eager to hear you, Dr. Neela Bhattacharya.
Well, I hope I can be of, I can communicate. That's the issue. We'll see.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't attend the rest of the conference. I wish I did, then I would have had a better understanding. So anyway, you just invited me. I'm very appreciative of that. And so I'll share my thoughts.
Sure. We are waiting for that.
We are eagerly waiting to listen to you, madam.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Good morning.
Ma'am, this is Dr. Nagatna Parande.
Yes. Hello. How are you?
Fine, ma'am. We are very happy to have you here.
Yes, I'm very happy. I'm happy to see your face. I mean, on email, you know, we communicated a few
Yeah,
times. So what do you teach?
I teach post-colonial literature and English language teaching, ma'am.
Okay. Okay.
And
All right.
comparative
That's good.
literature is also one of the fields which I'm interested in.
Uh-huh.
My
I
PhD
think,
is in comparative literature.
Comparative literature.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I think, somebody is logged into two devices at the same time, which echoes. So please don't do that. If one person or, two people are joining the session with two devices at the same place, it echoes. So try and avoid doing that.
Hello. Hello. Am I
Yes.
audible?
Hello.
Yeah, yeah,
Madam,
yeah.
this is Pooja Halyar, colleague of Nagratna Parande, one of the organizing secretaries of this conference. It's nice seeing you and meeting you, ma'am.
Hello. Yes. Yes. Nice to meet
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, this COVID crisis really has brought so many people from around the world with us to befriend. I think that's the advantage.
Right. Right. Yes. Everything has its positives and negatives, right?
Yeah. And madam, I would like to state that when you gave your topic, it triggered off the entire conference because we were so interested in the topic that you have
Really?
given. Yes, yes. It's a very novel one. And we are very keen to,
Okay.
see what you're going to speak under this.
I hope I can satisfy your curiosity. I wasn't sure at all, and I thought, well, I will just speak uh, what is coming from my heart and from my
Yeah.
teaching experiences. So
Yes, ma'am.
so you're Pooja, right?
Yes.
Did you say you're Pooja?
Yes, I'm Pooja.
Okay. Okay. Yes. So you're using Nagaratna's names. I mean, that's
Yes,
why I
yes.
was.
I tried to connect with my phone, but it started echoing because we are in the same place,
Oh,
sitting
got it.
together. Sitting
Okay.
together.
Okay. All right. All right.
You
No
know,
problem.
violating the social distancing that is actually.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, we do what we can, but yeah,
Yeah.
we have to manage somehow.
Yes, ma'am. Thunder, sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're audible.
Can we begin or are you waiting for the participants?
I don't know. I don't know. It is 84
Yeah,
participants.
I think it's time to start.
See?
Because it's 7:05, I suppose.
It is 7775.
Okay, then.
Okay.
Over to
Okay.
you, Thunder, sir.
Yeah. Good evening to all the participants and my dear colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank the Honorable Vice Chancellor and the university officials and the Chairman of the Department of Studies in English, Rani Chennamma University, for guiding and supporting us in holding this webinar workshop. Good morning to you, Professor Neela Bhattacharya, Madam. At the very outset, I thank Professor Neela Bhattacharya for joining with us in this workshop from New York. Today, we are pleased to welcome Dr. Neela Bhattacharya, a very special guest from the United States of America. Professor Neela Bhattacharya is a senior professor in English and Women's Studies at Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. She teaches a course that she created called The Goddess in World Religions. Her other classes include science fiction, British and American literature, and multidisciplinary course like Making of the Modern Mind and Studies in World Cultures. She writes a blog called Stand Under the Mother Principle. She is a member of American Academy of Religion and the Dharma Academy of North America. She also belongs to a music school, Sudhashwar, run by Santanaga. She has to her credit 2 books, good number of articles and book chapters. It's published in international journals, conducted webinars, and has put in 38 years of teaching experience. She has many awards and fellowships for her academic achievements. As we understand, she has vast experience in communicative English through the digital world. With this brief introduction, I welcome Professor Neela Bhattacharya to talk on Communication is Communion, Piercing the Veil of Simulacra in the Digital Age. I request all the participants to listen carefully to the speaker, for it is going to be a wonderful session this evening. Professor Neela Bhattacharya, Madam, over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tandava, for this kind introduction.
Yeah.
So welcome everybody. Good evening. It's morning here. It's very windy in New York. Talking from my basement. I have been teaching from my basement since we stopped early March because of this virus. So again, I was just telling Pooja a little while ago that everything has positive and negatives. So here I am talking to so many of you via this machine. So my subject, it just came to me. I thought instead of talking in technical terms, I should probably just discuss, my own what's in my heart. So let's see. So since it is COVID that is making us come together here, so why don't we first think about what is it that this virus is communicating? And I have been saying, and I've been writing that it is saying timeout. I mean, in the United States, we usually give children a timeout if they're misbehaving. So for me, this virus is giving all of us a timeout. I'm very aware of the terrible, terrible suffering that it is causing to so many people. We are actually privileged, those of us who have access to a computer, who have access to food and general companionship. It is devastating, and I cannot even begin to imagine what it is like for migrant workers in India, all over the world, who depend on going outside for their livelihood. And still, for me, this is a portal which is opening for transformation, both for teachers and the taught. So I wanted to begin with this visual of the planet. And somehow this virus is saying, go home, go within, and seek reality. So I wanted to begin with this, and in a kind of homage to this deadly virus. As those of you who have looked at my background, I am actually, somehow I ended up without my planning as a scholar of world's religions. And I teach and study the feminine principle and relevance. And of course, I write a blog called Stand Under the Mother Principle, but that's not the subject today. But somehow I see this virus as part of a very compassionate message, a communication from something which is both alive and not alive. So what is it? What is this reality that it is asking us to seek? So this is my main argument. If we want to truly communicate, communion with one's inner life is vital, especially in the age of simulacra and the hyperreal. So here we are communicating through this machine, and yet we are trying to create a community. So as an English teacher, as a language teacher, I am always interested in the root meaning of the words. So this is where the title came to my mind, that we need to commune. What is communication? And how do we communicate in an age where we are surrounded by simulacra? Hello? Can you hear me? I hear somebody speaking. Can you all hear me?
You're audible. You're audible. Actually.
Okay, there is a bit of a disturbance.
I think Fayyaz, you have to mute them. Yeah, I'm doing. Please.
Okay, yes, that's the thing, that this noise. Okay, all right, thank you. So, all right, so let me go back to my basic argument, as I was saying. So yes, so language and the root meaning of the word. So there are two important words in the digital age, simulacra and hyperreal. So let me see if I can move my. Okay, so the very first thing, those of you who have been teaching English, there is a paradox that I want to talk about. These are usual words. If we are having a conversation about communication, we talk about language, we talk about literacy. And as English teachers, we have inherited both a burden and a blessing. So let's think about how we communicate through ordinary language. Language matters. That's what actually creates us as human beings. But there is a kind of a paradox of this colonial heritage and access to global power. Those of you who are teaching post-colonial literature or post-colonial theory, you're very aware of this paradox. So we have inherited this language. English is actually my third language. My first language, my mother tongue, is Bengali, and I'm proficient in Hindi. So I'm teaching, to this global audience through a language which is not even my first language. And literacy, we have also inherited this idea that literacy is important. I do not know, those of you who are studying, say, different kinds of theories, we have been struggling to understand literacy. We've been struggling to understand orality. We have been privileging literacy. We've been privileging literacy, and yet it is still a coveted thing for a big part of the world. So if we are communicating through ordinary language, like we have to understand that particular language. But language and literacy also have deeper meaning. Just because we are literate, just because we can decipher the words on a page, that does not mean that we are actually understanding. And again, to use the word that I use in my blog, I call it stand under the mother principle, because we cannot understand, so we can only stand under. So we play with words, we play with language. We try to say something in a language which actually is foreign to us. I'm using English, as I said, it's my third language, and yet I have a PhD in English from Allahabad University. I've been teaching, in the US for more than 30 years now. So this strange paradox is very, very clear and real for me, that it is a colonial heritage, and yet it has given us access to globality. But what is the globe? I'm using this, all these figures in order to communicate that language may matter, but language is not simple. Even literacy is not simple. Literacy may create difficulty, but at the same time, without that language, we cannot have any connection with anybody. So now I have this slide. I thought at least I should learn a little bit about your institution. So I went to your website and I couldn't read anything. I had to click the English version. And it reminded me of a couple of years I had spent in Bangalore. And when I reached there, I felt completely illiterate because I could not read the language, could not read any of the Southern languages, even though I am fully trilingual, Bengali, Hindi, and English. And I know I have 9 years of Sanskrit in my background. So when I read Vidwana Sarvatra Pujyate, I said, well, that part I understand. But what does it mean? What is, again, to go to the root of the word? Etymology is very important because that's where we can find perhaps even at least a hint of what the word is trying to say. So the root, of course, is vid or Veda or video, which is the ability to see, the ability to really see, the root of drashta, drishti, darshana. So this ordinary language itself has deeper meaning, but how do we see in a world where literally we are confined to a machine? What is it that we are seeing? What is it that this, medium, sometime you might have heard of the famous thing, medium is the message. What is this medium messaging us? So that's where my whole subject kind of came about. So generally speaking, I hope you're listening to me. Here I'm speaking. We read, write, our ordinary understanding of the written and the spoken world. But let's look at this notion of the digital world. So in a way, we are talking to ghosts. I mean, if I think about it, I'm sitting in my basement. I'm talking to a machine here. I have all sorts of pictures. And the other end of this machine, there are about, 100 people or so who are seeing this picture. So what is it that we are communicating? How are we communicating when there is this human and machine interface happening? So, well, we have to understand a completely different medium if we want to communicate. It doesn't matter if we have the communication skills. I have taught communication, and of course, I've been teaching English literature, writing, and writing is my main subject because that's our bread and butter course. I teach composition to a lot of students who have difficulty with the English language, even though it is their mother tongue. But when we are using a different medium, when we are, and it's not just a medium, it is almost something that is engulfing us. We are almost drowning in the machine world. So it is vital for teachers, whatever kind of teacher, that we understand this human machine interface. So simulacra. I see some patterns showing up. I do not know if you can see. All right. For some reason, on my screen, there are all these lines. Do you see these lines? Hello?
Yeah, they are very much visible, ma'am.
But why are these lines coming in? Do you see these scratches? Or do you see the screen clean? Do you see a clean screen?
Yeah, no, there are scratches over there.
Yeah, I don't know why I have no idea how the scratches are showing up. So again, maybe some, ghost in the machine is doing something here. These scratches are not supposed to be there. All right.
Yeah, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Please
Doesn't
proceed.
matter. All right. Okay. It's fun anyway. Okay. So if you can read some of the things that I have kind of accumulated from the web, and it's also very strange that there is so much information available today. So if we are simply trying to communicate information, we are redundant. A lot of students do not need teachers, because if we are simply giving information, access to a computer or a smartphone gives them, I tell my students that how sad that they're holding the world's most powerful machine that has ever been created, and all the world's knowledge is in their fingertips. But what are they doing with it? What are they doing with it? So those who are able to make use of this machine, they have all the information in the world. They do not need teachers to give them information. But transformation is a whole different thing. But in order to, again, to go back, we have to understand this medium. So the reason I'm using those of you who are interested in critical theory, you probably know Jean Baudrillard's term, simulacra. And this is a quote. So it is no longer a question of imitation nor duplication, nor even parody. It is a question of substituting the science of the real for the real. So we live in the world of science, simply science. So the first figure here showing from reality to hyper reality. So we think that there is reality and then there is fiction. Think about it, when we are teaching, say, a novel or something, oh, this is fiction, this is non-fiction. But we have left that world. And there is this strange thing that is going on, that non-reality to hyper-reality. But what I want to say is the problem of reality is not a new thing. Problem of reality is very old. I mean, if we go back to Plato, life itself is a false copy. It has created a lot of metaphysical dualism. And what is really real? And I, a little bit, I will go into the Indic world and we'll discuss that part. But in modern thought, where the distinction between appearance and reality are challenged, the simulacrum has more value as a critical idea and becomes a copy without an original. This is the important thing about the simulacra. The idea here being reproduction without reference. So this is the thing that is happening. And when we're trying to understand reality, we're trying to figure out where we land. Where do we find our footing if it is all this virtuality, all this virtual reality? So we have discussed, we talk about different things as reality and representation. It has been part of critical theory for a very long time. So from reality to an image, and then an image is a tainted image, which is a poor representation. Then we mask the image. Representation is hiding reality. But then there is a baseless image, which is simulacra. Represent is completely divorced from reality. So this is the world that we are inhabiting. We need to understand this medium. We need to understand before we can even begin to think how we'll communicate through this, and what message does it give. So another term is actually hyper-reality, which I like because, again, it comes, one of my favorite writers, Umberto Eco, uses this, and he has a wonderful book. So hyper-reality in semiotics and postmodernism is an inability of consciousness to distinguish reality from a simulation of reality, especially in technologically advanced postmodern societies. So I'm assuming, and I could answer questions later, this notion that we live in a postmodern world. Well, I am very fond of a French thinker who's speaking these days, Bruno Latour, who says we've never been modern. So we can talk about that later, but I just wanted to say that we are living in the world of hyperreal, where simply science are talking to other science. And I do not know about advanced postmodern societies, because we are actually living in a world where things are degenerating. Now, I picked this picture of Times Square, which is just about an hour from where I am right now, where I live. It is empty today because of the virus. But if you go there and you are inundated by simulacra, inundated by hyperreality, it's a dazzling world, and it drowns our consciousness. It drowns us with a kind of spectacular display of the science system, spectacular display. And that's all it is. That's all it is. You cannot find a referent anywhere to a lot of things that this particular scene that I'm sharing with you. But when it is empty, I'm asking you to imagine, a very busy Times Square in the heart of New York City, completely empty because people are afraid, people are dying. I cannot begin to tell you that in the last 2 months, more than 100,000 people have died in the world's most powerful country. In a way, I've been living in the belly of the beast. I also love this. I also have come to recognize its power, its beauty, its compassion, its people. People from all over the world live here. People from all over the world commune. On the streets of New York, I can hear my mother's mother tongue, which actually is Sylheti. Some people will call it as a dialect of Bengali, but it's a marvelous language in its own right, which I cannot speak, but I understand. And if I hop into a taxi, I will hear Urdu, I will hear Hindi, Punjabi, and Sylheti. There are lots and lots of people from Bangladesh, which is my origin. My mother's family had to flee in 1947. My mother is 95 years old, and just yesterday, since you mentioned my music school, Shuddha Shor, we were celebrating Qazi Nazrul Islam's birthday centenary. So this is a city which is full of people from all over the world, full of people who think they are seeking what they call the American dream. In some ways, so many people come here because they are seeking a different reality. And then they are plunged into something which can be devastating in many ways if they are completely sucked into this hyperreal world. So what happens that it affects our consciousness deeply. So we need to be aware. We need to be very, very aware. Maybe because I have been living here and teaching all kinds of diverse things, that I am very aware of this hyperreality. All right. So now I want to draw your attention to a favorite writer who passed away. Hello, there sounds like a kid there. So this is very interesting. It's very interesting. Here we are talking about hyperreality, and a real child's laughter kind of tells us there is something real.
Yeah.
A child's laughter is not simulacra. That's, I have two children who are grown up. But so anyway, I kind of almost welcome this interruption, if you want to call it. So, so here is this author, Benjamin Barber. I had heard him because we had invited him in my school many, many years ago. And I use this particular work of his in my world cultures class. So here we are, the so-called postmodern world. So he has this very famous book called Jihad versus McWorld. So consumerist capitalism versus religious and tribal fundamentalism. So on the one hand, we think we live in an advanced postmodern world with gadgetry, with this absolutely spectacular and unbelievably amazing machinery. But on the other hand, the world seemed to have this strange violence inherent in this machine world. So I'm going to read this. This is the beginning of his article, and then he wrote a book later. So I'm going to read it slowly. Just beyond the horizon of current events lie two possible political futures, both bleak, neither democratic. The first is a retribalization of large swaths of humankind by war and bloodshed, a threatened Lebanonization of national states in which culture is pitted against culture, people against people, tribe against tribe. A jihad in the name of 100 narrowly conceived faiths against every kind of interdependence, every kind of artificial social cooperation and civic mutuality. The second is being born in on us by the onrush of economic and ecological forces that demand integration and uniformity, and that mesmerize the world with fast music, fast computers, and fast food. With MTV, Macintosh, and McDonald's pressing nations into one commercially homogeneous global network, one mech world tied together by technology, ecology, communications, and commerce. The planet is falling precipitantly apart and coming reluctantly together at the very same moment. So, the reason I like this writer is that he's able to present this dilemma. We cannot, at this point in human history, we cannot just go on in any old way. So these are the two worlds that are pitted against each other. And I want to make people aware that he's using the word jihad for every kind of religious fundamentalism, every kind of narrow ideology of not connecting with anybody else. But there is a reason, because on the other side is what he's calling this mech world, consumerist capitalism, which is a very powerful homogenizing force, which wants to flatten everything, which wants to completely destroy diversity, which wants to completely destroy the difference. So there is this strange irony. We want to come together, but not in a flattened, because that's the neo-colonial move, imperialist move. So eat this. Everybody wants to eat McDonald's. Well, why would I want to eat McDonald's when we can have this most wonderful food that every community creates? But unfortunately, we do not have access to good food anymore, because even there we are faced with simulacra. And believe me, I just finished teaching my composition class where the subject was food matters. And it is horrifying what we have been doing to our food systems. And again, in my classes, I show what Vandana Shiva has been doing about this abysmal destruction of the world's food systems. So if we have to live, we have to recognize that while there is this simulacra, this dazzling gadgetry, amazing computers, and this is an old article, more than 20 years old, but he came up with something that, it's worth reading. It's worth reading at least the article that was published in the Atlantic, if not the entire book. So I wanted to bring this up in order to bring the whole argument that we need to do something different when we are trying to communicate. So here is this mech world, which is Disneyfying the whole world. Actually, there is a word called Disneyfication. So apparently, it's a happiness machine. But is it? Is it a happiness machine? Or does it lead to another kind of addiction? Does it lead to something so deadly? And all of us who love our machines, we know how addictive this can be. Believe me, I listen to YouTube incessantly, because all the world's big professors, like I mentioned, Bruno Latour, and I'm very fond of some amazing speakers. There is one writing in New York, Swami Sarvapriyananda, who speaks about Advaita very powerfully. Even though I am a student of Tantra mainly, both Shakta and Vajrayana. But I am fascinated by these incredible speakers. And all I can do, I can have the machine, I can walk around in my backyard and I can listen to all that without having to pick up a book. And I get so much knowledge through this. But it can be addictive. And we know that studies have been done. It's actually deadly for young people, those of us who are old and we can afford to be listening to YouTube but if people are simply using the machine to click on Facebook, and it does lead to addiction. It leads to all kinds of mental illnesses. So here is this figure, sitting in front of our simulated reality as a Mickey Mouse. So we have to be aware and we have to be wary of this Disneyfication of the world and not fall into its trap. Okay. So let me see. So since I mentioned Facebook, so how do we communicate through Facebook? I'm glad to be friends with so many people around the world, and I use Facebook for communication. But look at the way signification works in Facebook. And a lot of people have studied how simply these likes or different kinds of, these significating systems affect people's mental states, their emotional states. Did I get enough likes? Why are we so hungry for likes? What is it this? No, but let's just give Facebook, some space here, since I am a Facebook user, and it's because of Facebook that I'm connected to so many people around the world. So I'm grateful for this particular media. But what is it doing? It is taking us to a kind of culture, almost a post-human culture. Again, I won't have time to go into all the discussion about post-human, but why people are into this liking thing? Because we're consumed by something else. The sign system, the simulacra world that we live, here people are getting power via one's, say, this simply a thumbs up. Are we getting some sort of satisfaction out of it? And if we extend that, it's like a brand new car. It has a sign value, and Baudrillard and all these people have talked a lot about that. That it has a sign, the value of a sports car marked by an objectified female figure. For example, this one. What does it say? We're consumed by these images, and they are sending messages, subliminal messages, creating desires, creating powerful emotions, and we have begun to live in it, craving. And some people have done some research and saying that getting these, some of these things on the machine, it's almost like getting hooked on some powerful drugs. So here we are, teachers of the 21st century. I, of course, have been teaching for a very long time, but I am also speaking to a lot of young teachers. That's why I wanted to know who are the people who are listening. There are students. There are people who have to devise new ways of communication. So think about it. We are teaching in an age of distractions, distractions compounded over one over the other. So we have to commune with a machine. We have to commune with mechanical aspect of our students' minds. So how do we do that? Do we forge something in a way so that we can communicate without the embodied presence of a body language? So in hyperreality, and please think about this a little bit, that when we are face to face, even though it's still partial communication, our body language communicates different things. But in hyperreality, it's sight and hearing. You're seeing this, again, a hyper-real, just some PowerPoint pictures, and you're hearing my voice. And I'm, of course, 10,000 miles away. But I have seen students sitting next to each other, and I mean, my sons have done that through machines, talking to each other, not talking while sitting next to each other through the machine.
Talking about
Hello? I see there is a little more disturbance.
I'm watching mobile. He's watching.
Is anybody asking something?
Machine.
No. Fayyaz, can you please mute them? I think there's I'm trying to find out who is the culprit. Just a minute.
That's okay. That's all right. That's all right. As long as you know, I mean, I'll talk about distractions in a minute. So what I was saying is that the distance is even more distance is created. There is no intimacy. There is no intimacy of smell or touch or shared taste. So the body language is also communicating, something very different here. And then the next situation of the world that we are communicating at the time of the anthropology. I do not know, some of you probably are familiar that we have entered a new geological time marked by the human interference. That is what Anthropocene means. So if human beings as geological power were altering, or the Earth's situation, every human has to be aware what that digital age signifies, what this Anthropocene means for all of us. After all, the digital age and these are about numbers, enumeration, which is fragmentation and alienation. I have taught a course called The Making of the Modern Mind for many, many years, and we talk about creation of alienation through this fragmentation. But now that, literally with such huge speed, we have entered what now we call digital humanities. So the question is, what is human in the age of this digital humanities? I have written a paper that was published recently called AI as Awakened Intelligence. So we need everything can be done by machine now. We are redundant unless we reach into the depth of our own human potential. And there is too much thought. If there is too much thought, we need to be more in touch with ourselves. Now, what this digital age is creating, it can create tremendous narcissism, or it could reveal something deeper in our being. Now, this is where I'm going to go to this understanding of distraction. So, from, since I'm talking mostly to people from India, Chitta Vritti, yoga is $1 billion industry in the United States, but most people think it is some sort of a, exercise. But after all, yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. It is a natural thing for the mind to run around. And even slightest distraction takes our mind where it goes. So communication then is simply noise, ordinary communication. It's brain chatter to brain chatter. My brain is chattering and your brain is chattering. Is any communication taking place? And I quote this famous Zen quote, dead tree murmuring in the skull. We are not even aware that our brain is constantly chattering. The other thing about this digital world, it's since I'm a religion scholar, so I find these two images very powerfully communicating the world that we inhabit today. So the machine is actually a devouring head of the Rahu, separated from the embodied, our complete embodied being. So if you think about the image of Rahu and the image of the hungry ghost or pretas that Vajrayana or Tibetan Buddhism, Vajrayana is Indian, Tibetan Buddhism is just an aspect of that, it creates the idea of the hungry ghost. We're never satisfied. It is infinity with no boundaries. Bodies give us boundaries, and it is vital that we understand the boundary, because otherwise this devouring head, which is insatiable, we can never satisfy this. And this brings us to a book that I am very, very fond of, and I highly recommend people to read it. It is called The Master and His Emissary, where it's a massively big book of study of the modern world, and it's about the brain, understanding our own brain. But on the cover page, it gives this picture of an all-seeing eye from a broken mirror. So on the one hand, we have this crazy world, but fascinating stuff going on in neurology, in understand neuroscience, molecular biology, quantum biology, and this particular writer, whose work is being hailed as the book of the century. So I'm just going to give you a couple of quotes from here, from the book, which is really worth reading. So what he talks, there's nothing new. I mean, if you are aware of Chitta-vritti and understanding of the self and our attention, but what he says, there has been a relentless growth of self-consciousness, leading to increasing difficulty in cooperation. An increasingly mechanistic, fragmented, decontextualized world marked by unwarranted optimism mixed with paranoia and a feeling of emptiness has come about, reflecting, I believe, the unopposed action of a dysfunctional left hemisphere. So this world where we are trying to communicate, it is overpowered by that brain chatter, the left hemisphere. But he comes to this great wisdom when he says, I believe it to be profoundly true that the inner structure of our intellect reflects the structure of the universe, which of course is the root of all the powerfully intelligent system of India, the tantric system. And he says the kind of attention we pay actually alters the world. We are literally partners in creation. So if we are trying to communicate, we need to become that partner in creation and not become hungry ghosts or not create more hungry ghosts. Because think about what the hungry ghosts are doing. The polluted earth, the Anthropocene, and I think this virus is giving us a warning. And this brings us to a little bit more about as I was saying, that I'm very fond of this French thinker, Bruno Latour, who says that we have never been modern. And he engages with the notion of Gaia hypothesis. And he says, Gaia is not globe. But he said something, I found this, I'm just exploring his thought and not completely, I cannot talk more about him. But he says something. India is a reservoir of alternative interpretations of what the global is. And these ways of viewing the world need to be exposed. So, and he says something, and he's very, very aware of what the Buddha calls a dependent origination or interdependent. Everybody talks about interdependence, but we do not even know what that really means. It is not some sort of, entities that are connected together with a glue. It's a totally different understanding of the world. And this is something that he says, the world is not a solid continent of facts sprinkled by a few lakes of uncertainties, but a vast ocean of uncertainties speckled by a few islands of calibrated and stabilized forms. Do we really know that little? We know even less. Paradoxically, this astronomical ignorance explains a lot of things. So I like it when a great thinker speaks of ignorance. So here is this conjunction of inner and outer reality. Social media can be a self ego enhancer, and we know that, and a tremendous addiction. So let's look at Facebook. So here it is excess of expression. Everybody wants to express. So there is, of course, hunger for expression, which is the word prakasha. The word prakasha root is expression, it's light. It has a positive aspect. It's an equal opportunity to express. But the negative aspect, of course, like, everything has its both sides, anything goes. But we need inner quiet to enter what is known as vimarsha. So now we are in the heart, of course, of our Indic world. A lot of people reach India's, wealth of knowledge systems, but most, people misread the word Maya. They think the world is an illusion. The world is not an illusion. As this is a line from, one of my favorite masters, the mind is Maya. Reality lies beyond the mind. Now, this is fascinating. while this hyperreal world, excessive self-consciousness, left brain is all about the mind, but the mind projects. Maya is simply projection of our own minds, not the reality, not the touchable reality, not the reality that the Buddha, when he touches the earth, the Bhumi Sparsha Mudra, a grounded reality shows. But reality is inaccessible to us because we are surrounded by our own brain chatter. So at this point then, in order to create a world that is worth living, a world where our children, our grandchildren can actually thrive, not just barely survive, that we need a samyak drishti, the right view, the video, the Veda, the ability to see right. So the virus is communicating to us that we are living in faster and faster machines, and we are embodied beings. We are not. Our heads are not cut off. We do not want to be digested by the head of a Rahu with no body. We are embodied beings. We need to slow down. But it is harder and harder to pay attention to anything beyond the machine. We are addicted to speed. We are addicted to stuff. And the fakeness, I mean, you all heard the term fake news. I don't even want to get into the American politics right now, but that samyak drishti has to be developed. And how do we do that? We have to, of course, have to go beyond thinking. We have to go to the ability to really see Pashyanti, the root word of Vipassana. So, but I'm not talking about anything too complicated or religious here, by the way. Something very simple. I do that in my classes with all my students. Doesn't matter what I do, what I teach, from composition to film and literature, to see within. And most students, within 2 minutes of observing their inner world, recognize that how messed up their inner world is. They're not present. I tell them, hey, you said when I was taking attendance, you said I'm present, but you're not present. You're somewhere else. Your mind is somewhere else. You are having a fantastic party in your head while I'm trying to teach you Shakespeare or trying to teach you how to write. And then you give me a paper which is all over the place. So by the way, I want to, this particular text that I just taught in my class, which also brings the issue of communication. I don't know, some of you may be familiar with this science fiction film called Arrival, based on an amazing novella called Story of Your Life by Ted Chiang. So you can see how from one head this thing, and it slowly turns into this, the spiral, and calms down, and maybe a communication can happen. So here is this, on the one side, I don't know if anybody has seen the film, I don't want to ruin it for you, but the aliens are trying to communicate with us. And I tell my students, aliens are us. We are trying to communicate with each other. And then I created a chart, which on this right side, of different languages of the world. And many people do not, again, you probably cannot see. The second one looks like Arabic and it says it is Arabic, but it's actually not Arabic. It is simply, say it's an English thing. So creation of communication, creation of sign systems, and how they communicate. The musical sign systems communicate something different. The mandala communicates something different. The mathematical sign, they communicate something different. So I talk about this in my class about signs and symbols because this film and the book is perhaps the most amazing text to understand communication. But the film and these aliens are trying to communicate through a language which is not linear. They're trying to communicate simultaneous consciousness. They're trying to communicate something that takes us out of time. And I show my students that how the sign in Arrival is very similar to a very ancient symbol of Ouroboros, which is a symbol of wholeness. It's not about fragmentation if we enter a different dimension. So here we are. Sometimes the old ways can be guides. If they are modified by Deshkal, we cannot be stuck in the past because there is no such thing as the past anyway. And Bruno Latour talks quite a lot about this. And we need to understand that without that inner communion with oneself, we are not communicating. We are simply imparting some information. And the language system, since I'm interested in language and I'm interested in Sanskrit texts of various levels of language. So para pashyanti madhyama vaikhari vak, I don't have time to go into it, and but vak is the what is coming out of my mouth right now. But where is it coming from? If it is simply brain chatter, that I'm simply communicating some words, there is no real communication. So we need that inner quiet, because we cannot dance otherwise. We cannot participate in the world of this beautiful world. And it is possible to dissolve time and its grasping power. And again, this is a beautiful and all the world's traditions have it. This is from Rumi. We who see the inner reality of the whole world see the heart and are not caught by the outer form of things. So inner life is communing with oneself, and there are many different ways. This is something, the kingdom of God is within you, and we can find it. So I'm almost coming to the end of my presentation. So to go back to your main logo, Vidwan, if Vidwan has to be able to see, but Vidwan cannot sell out to Vyapar. Unfortunately, we live in the world of simply extreme commodification, extreme commerce. Nothing wrong with commerce. We need to have trade, but it has to be fair. But this is not ordinary Vyapar we are living in. It's a hyper real Vyapar where we are buying and selling stuff which doesn't exist. As you know, finance capital creates, unreal things. So what do people really need in an age that may be called post-corona? Think about it. We have all these different words, AD, CE, BC. People started to talk about in the United States before 9/11, after 9/11. We may have at point we have to talk about, post-corona, PC. So if we have to teach in the post-corona world, teachers must be in touch with their inner reality. If we learn to commune with ourselves, we can communicate. We need to imagine a different world if we want to survive. What's the point otherwise? And what is that? We have to awaken our deeper intelligence. We have to create an education for a planetary consciousness and get away from too much self. The horrible, horrible fights, communal violence, digital, strange fascination, terrible fight with neighbors, long-term neighbors that's going on in India. It is terribly, terribly sad. So we do not need to sell new identities. We need to dissolve the identity because it is an evolutionary imperative right now if we want to get out of this Anthropocene. And so this is my last slide. Choice is ours. We want to pierce the veil and enter the beauty of a naked reality, or we can be lost in the maze of simulacra. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam, for this wonderful, thought-provoking session. And I would say, each slide can become a session. That was the kind of, value add that you gave us with your, wonderful session. Now I open the floor for discussion. If there are any questions, clarifications? I'm sure there would be plenty of them. But to begin with, my question would be coming from my end.
Sure.
Madam, I just always thinking about this and discussing with people. As you also brought up this issue of capitalism and the between capitalism. So we have been moving from feudalism to capitalism now. And my question is what next? Because you have, done a lot of work on this. I believe that you have done, certainly looked into that. What next is my question.
Right.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm not an economist, but I understand that this isn't working. We have reached a point that Marx called, late capitalism, finance capitalism, where it is no longer grounded in any reality. So a lot of people have begun to devise different kind of economies, gift economy. Otherwise, there will be no planet left if we. By the way, some of you again to think about the word capital, right? The root
Yeah.
is capita, again head. Capitalism is all about the head. It's about that Rahu that eats up everything. It is that hungry ghost. It's a hungry ghost. So, and we have identified with it. Hook, line, and sinker. We have digested an ideology, hook, line, and sinker. There are people saying if we want people, and again, believe me, I lived in the United States. I have lived in the world of capitalism. When I lived in Bangalore, my husband worked for IBM, and I know what that world is all about, inside out, in many ways. So this is the challenge to the young generation. We have to devise a different economic system. And people have already begun to do that. I know in the United States, there are many, many organizations. And the thinkers, Bruno Latour, and so many people are talking about the need. So some people are talking about gift economies, but again, something has to be completely new. Without the end to this head-based economic system, we will not survive. The earth will be fine. The human species probably will perish, self-destruct. But I don't have an answer. I'm not an economist, but I know how little we really need. And the virus is teaching us. We don't really need all that stuff. So at least we can individually modify our, so connect the head to the body and not be digested by Rahu of capitalism.
Is there a beginning, madam, that that shift is happening from capitalism to the
in small
level?
places? Yes,
Okay.
in small groups it is happening, and I am happy to see that. More sustainable communities, tremendous awareness that just think about it. People are no longer self-sufficient. This is where when Bruno Latour talks that the Gaia is not globe, globalization, it's good to have communication globally, right, through this. But we need to grow our own food. We need to have community created economies. And again, we cannot go back anywhere. I also like his thing that we cannot, he gives this wonderful image of a plane flying. So we left somewhere, but we have nowhere to land because there is no such thing as globe. We cannot go back because that's destroyed. So it's not, nobody is saying go back to some sort of glorified past, by the way. That too is a simulacra. Some sort of, oh, glorious Hindu past or glorious stupidity. No, we have to devise a new world. We have to put our heads together. But for that, we need to be aware that our heads are chattering, saying, hey, you need this, you need that. We don't. So anyway, I don't have an answer to that. I'm just giving you a humanities answer. Economists, but
that.
Yeah.
Good insight.
Yeah.
And also you
All
spoke
right.
about, the French thinker, we are not modern. Can you please elaborate on that?
Right. Okay. Good question. You're paying attention. All right.
Yeah.
So think about the history of modernity, which is a provincial European development, by the way, which began with Renaissance. Such and a very powerful, important, on one way, moved from what is called the theocentric to the androcentric, the search for the human. What is human? But in the process, there was a radical split between the subject and the object. Nature, culture, dualism, metaphysical dualism took place. And I talk quite a lot in my published work about that. So modernism is also, so what Latour talks about, that we've never been modern, that means we never really created the split. It's a phantasm. We are always interdependent. We're never separate entities. So this aspect of scientific atheism or scientific materialism, that we are subjects and there is an objective world, right? This is modernist paradigm. The human beings are subjects, again, comes from Cartesian dualism, where he radically separates from the mind from the body. We are the subject, we are the thinking subject, and there is, I think, therefore I am, and there is this objective world, including our own bodies, right? Again, too much head. So when he says we've never been modern, because we can, there is no such thing, and again, there's no such thing as an objective world. And the quantum physics and all of the, everything that we discovered, the scientific world discovered in the last century, from Einstein's, relativity, there is no time and space. They're not separate entities. There is no subject. Reality is dependent of the observer. So we've never been modern, right? Because that radical separation is itself a kind of illusion. But there is much more to his thought. And you can explore his thought on your own.
Right. There are many more questions, but I would leave I will ask other participants to ask questions.
Sure.
Please go ahead. Can you raise your hands?
Ma'am.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I would like to ask you one question. I am Professor Dr. Bandu Kamri from Pandharpur.
Okay.
How would you explain your idea, ma'am? Hello?
Yes, which idea?
How would you explain your idea in the light of Derrida's theory of deconstruction?
Okay. Sure. So deconstruction, on the one hand, is a deconstruction of Western metaphysical presence, right? I am deconstructing in my work all ideologies in a way. I am deconstructing the very idea of communication, because we take for granted that we understand what is communication, right? If you looked at my presentation, I actually did a Derridian move. Now, the Derridian move has many, many layers in it. It is not just deconstruction of Western metaphysics, which began with Nietzsche, by the way. And there are always thinkers who were not centered on the present, the speaking voice, the self, right? Because the entire postmodern dialogue is the self and other. The other is speaking, because the self wants to digest the other. So when we think we are communicating on, I have the voice and I am communicating, I have information to give, and there are all these students who are taking in all that information, but that's not how it works. And I have studied theories of pedagogy of the oppressed, where we realize that it's a dialogue that is happening. So deconstruction is a useful tool. It's actually a skillful means. If I use the Buddhist term, upaya kaushala, it's a very useful term, because it stops us from getting stuck to any part of the binary opposition. So that's why I went to the root word of communion. But again, we need to understand what that means. And in the very beginning, I said, we cannot understand, we have to stand under. That means we have to take in the whole thing and not be lost in the aporia, by the way. The trouble with the deconstruction is that it can take us to absolute stasis if we do not understand his move. But there are some wonderful thinkers who are looking at Derrida's ideas in a different way. It is simply not to get stuck or be, again, because very early when I was writing my first book, I realized that a lot of stuff that deconstructionists are saying has been going on in Indian dialogue for a very long time, 2nd century, the dialogue between the Buddhists and the Brahminical thinkers about the nature of language. So yes, there is a underpinning of deconstruction in my work, so that we do not get stuck to anything. So I've been deconstructing simulacra, communication, communion, and you have to find it out on your own. There is nothing that you can get stuck to, because then we are lost in the maze.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any others?
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, actually, this is Vikas Bhardwaj here. Is there anybody else who is?
Yeah,
to
I
ask the
see
question?
Gopika. I see Gopika Kulkarni.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
Gopika, you go ahead, please. I'll ask
Firstly, I
later.
congratulate you, ma'am. And my
Hey,
question is,
can I stop for a minute?
Yeah.
just
yeah,
please,
sure.
please listen to me. Can you not
Sure.
call me ma'am? I know it's a habit. Just call me professor. Think about the word madam, right? It's a colonial epithet. I told that to Fayyaz also. And I know in India, we have digested all this colonial language and nobody uses that word in the United States. And I kind of appreciate that. So, hey, some other word. I don't mind. If it slips out, it's okay. But become aware that the word madam is a very colonial epithet. All right, go ahead, Gopika.
Yes, Professor.
Okay, good.
Yes, Professor. I have two doubts. And can you light upon language of communication and gendering in digital media? And my another question is, do you think that the church and like religious organization and social communication in digital age connected people towards communion?
Oh, that's a very good question. Okay,
Thank you.
so did you use the word gendering? The first part, let me write it down. So yes, so the religious part is very deadly actually. Let me begin there and then I'll go to the gendering thing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, see, remember, power structures manipulate every medium, okay? Power structures, and religion is probably the deadliest power structure, the organized, institutionalized religion, no matter which religion it is, all right? So you do not want to give your power to any media that's going to manipulate you, okay? So WhatsApp can send, and I have just finished writing papers that will be published soon. WhatsApp can send simulacra after simulacra, lies after lies after lies about your own neighbor, all right? About the neighbor's religion, about the nature's. We do not want to sell out to that media, okay? On the other hand, if we are in communion with ourselves, all right, following some of the methodologies, tried out, technologies, every tradition has it. Sufi tradition has it. Gnostic Christian tradition has it. Shamanic tradition has it. The Tantric India is probably the most powerful of them. But I call it, because it is gynocentric, and that leads us to the gendering aspect. I use the term gynocentric in my work. In my first book, In the Beginning is Desire, I have used the word gynocentric about Kali tradition, which is about entering the void of your own being. So gendering then, gendering of the media, and that's why I began with this figure of simulacra and this flashy sports car with a woman, right? The media actually creates fake sense of liberation for women. And if we are lost, whether men or women, by the way, we can be lost in the way the media portrays gendering. What is masculinity? What is femininity? What is the right way? And again, capitalism doesn't care. Capital wants to devour us all, okay? So we want to be very aware of the manipulation of this particular medium, which can be liberating if you are grounded in yourself. And what is that self? It is not an identity, by the way. We cannot be, and again, because my main scholarship is in Buddhist tantras and Shakta tantras and texts, the first thing that happens in it is complete dissolution of identity. Dissolution of identity is what takes us to a real communion with the entire grounded reality. So if we are lost in simulacra, if we digest the way genders are presented on this picture, If we digest the religious hatred that has been spewed out from every corner of the world, just imagine, we are giving our young people a deadly machine in their hands if they are not taught the actual grounding into their own, where there is this expansive awareness of our interdependence, expansive awareness of that we are all in it together. And we cannot have a religious identity. We cannot have a gendered identity if we want to create a different world. So thank you. You asked a difficult question, but I think we need to be extremely wary of not mixing the church and the state, never mixing the church and the state. We never mix, this hyper real world with anything real in the tradition that has taught us to be always wary of this kind of power mongering by religions themselves.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Gopika.
Yes, Professor Bhattacharya.
Okay.
This is Vikas Bhardwaj this side.
Yes, hello.
Let me, yeah, good evening. Sorry, good morning to you.
That's all right. It's okay.
So it was definitely an enriching experience for me to listen to your lecture. And the talk was indeed very erudite. I must say that I'm spellbound with your lecture, with your talk. So my question to you is, if we are living in a hyper-real or a simulated world, then what do you call the real? I mean, what is the real? So, for example, if this online webinar is simulated, then it must be the simulation of the original seminar. This then, I mean, what is the definition of this real thing? Aren't we? Just shifting the definition of reality from one thing to the other. So that is my question to you.
Oh, well, so you're asking, of course, a deep philosophical question. What is the real? That has been our human predicament for a very long time. But see, it is a spectrum. Let's just think about it. And I think the recognition, both psychological understanding, that we project a reality. So let's just think about it. This particular seminar, if it had happened in person, right? I lived in Bangalore. I lived. So look at this image of this, pink, these two teddies that is showing up on my screen. So
yeah,
if we were sitting in a seminar hall, right? We'll having the conversation. I'm giving a lecture, you are all sitting there listening. So there is at least an aspect where there is something tangible, okay? Not necessarily real, tangible. So let's just talk about, and we'll still be having a messed up communication because brain chatter to brain chatter, right? If you are not, at least, I'm not saying that you have to be like Arjuna, who sees nothing but the eye of the bird, right? To invoke our stories, because we have such wonderful stories, right? Arjuna is this great yogi because his mind is completely at one. He doesn't see anything except the eye of the bird. So that's why he's this great master. But even he doesn't hear Krishna when he gives this great message, right? At the end of Mahabharata, he says, I forgot. Krishna, what did you say to me in the middle of the war? I forgot. So access to reality that our great masters have been saying is a work of sadhana, lifetimes and lifetime. So let's not go there, but it is worth trying, right? Awakening intelligence is not something unreal, by the way, because it is possible to get in touch with at least something tentatively more real than what we are led to in the hyper real world. What is hyper real has no connection, and we take it for something real. For example, the shiny sports car or the gadgetry that's going to make us happier, right? It's like this thing that is hanging in front of us, which is never reachable, never reachable. So we need to be aware of the hyper real world, and perhaps through our inner technologies, at least find what is real for me. And that me, neuroscience, again, because I'm talking to intellectuals, I'm talking to students, interdisciplinary awareness is vital. So when we project, so for example, I do this experiment with my students in my classes. So you meet somebody for the first time. For example, when I showed up on your screen, right? Whenever we meet somebody, our mind immediately projects something. You assume things. This is her name. This is where she lives. She must be like that. Unconscious chattering creates a projection. And that actually is Maya, right? We're projecting. So if we become aware that right now I'm seeing, Vikas, sitting in his room, I don't know anything about you, but still I'm trying to communicate something real that is real to me. But otherwise you're just a screen, or I could assume things about you. So what I'm saying is that we need to be aware of the hyperreal, because it can suck us into something so utterly impossible. Nothing but a head, capita, nothing but something that devours and never satisfies. To something, let's put the Rahu and the Ketu together. Let's have at least an embodied experience. Let's recognize that we are not just the heads. We are very real. We're not Maya, by the way. I'm not an Advaita Vedantin, I'm a Tantrika. We're very real. The Great Mother is completely aware in all of our senses. We need to recognize that hunger is not unreal, right? Pain is not unreal. Suffering is, because that's a mental construction. So it is possible to hold on to the numinous materiality of our embodied life. And in a compassionate way, we can communicate with the world, even through the machine. Then the machine is a good tool, right? Then this communication can happen, because I am sitting in my basement, grounded in a reality that makes sense, which makes me cold, which makes me want to go outside. It's just simply an awareness. But ultimate reality, who am I to talk about that? But thank you for a rather complex question.
Yeah, actually, there is one more. How can we escape this simulated or hyper-real world? So there is no escape.
No, we can. Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Where can we go?
We can. First of all, this is where education is useful, right? First of all, that happens in my classrooms all the time. So I'm not talking from some theory. As soon as we make students aware, even slightly aware of their inner realities, say, hey, listen, your mind is running all over the place. You are thinking about, for example, my student will say in this 2-minute experiment I do, I am anxious about my next class. I have a test to take. I said, well, then you are not here. You're already entered a simulacra of your own mind, which is taking you somewhere else. You are being sucked in by something which is not really giving you any true contentment or true happiness. And students talk about that all the time. We could create spaces where we are not sucked by a machine. We do not want to give these machines to young people. We need to create boundaries. Remember when I said that the hyper real is like fake infinity, right? There is no boundary, there is no border. But my mentor says that we live by our limitations. We need to create those boundaries so that we do not get sucked into this, sucked into the hyper real. But that requires discipline, that requires a lot of kind of sankalpa. This is where we can use the will for something good, and make people aware that, hey, this is worse than the Maya. It's like it's like something that is presenting something, creating a world which does not really exist, and we cannot survive if we are sucked in by the hyperreal.
Thank you, Professor.
You're welcome.
That was a loaded answer.
Well,
Any more questions? Madam, do you have time?
yeah, I have time. I don't
Okay.
have any hurry.
Any more questions, please? I think you should make use of this opportunity. My colleagues, hello. Should we call this a session, or do you have any questions? Fayyaz?
I see some things on the chat. Let me read that.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to put a question on the chat, I can look at it too.
Yeah.
So this is Ravi Balan. Okay, thank you. Do not be spellbound. See, I like the word spell, right? Then if you are spellbound, that you are again entering a hyperreal. So the spell, think about the word spell. By the way, it's the root of the word spelling too, right? Word, language. It is a spell. And I don't want to create another spell here. This is why I keep hampering the embodied experience. So whatever I have said because I've been taught these things by amazing teachers all my life. My teachers in Allahabad University who first introduced me to amazing thinkers like Krishnamurti. I'm an English professor, but I make use of all of these things. I started to write about Kali because in the United States, nobody had any understanding of a Black female god that I lived with for such a long time. So I'm trying to just share my teaching experiences in the United States for all these years, which has given me tremendous humility, actually. Young people teach me every day about their lives, very complex lives. They live, I teach at a community college. Right now it is devastated. So if you don't have a question, that's okay.
Yeah,
but please
should we
don't be
call this a
spellbound.
session? Yeah.
Pardon me?
Any more questions at the last time? Otherwise, we will call this a session. And thank you, madam. Thank you, madam, for this.
Excuse me.
Really wonderful. Okay. There's a question. Yeah.
Yes.
Madam, we the teachers of rural area in India face a lot of difficulties in communication, where the students are very poor in using technology.
Right.
So we have got many challenges. Do you also face such challenges there?
Yes, I do. Actually, this virus revealed the underbelly. The most disadvantaged in this very powerful country. I had so many students who couldn't. We think that everybody has a powerful machine. They couldn't log on to my Zoom classes. There were students whose families, they may have just one computer that the whole family uses. I had students who had to go for essential services. There were people suffering, so many poor people, because of my community college. I have very disadvantaged students. So this is why I didn't want to go and start talking about how to communicate in any kind of technical skill thing. We need to be aware of our students' embodied reality. If they are poor people in rural Karnataka, why are we giving them stuff that is not making any sense to them. They need skills, of course, to survive in the world. We have to give them skills, reading, writing skills, and survival skills. But all I'm saying is that the teachers need to become aware of the embodied experience of the student and the teacher and the inner reality. Then they will at least know what they want to do with their life, rather than participate in this thing called global capitalism, which is destroying the planet. And actually, if you are talking about in the United States, in the Western world, a big part of the world is recognizing that, and they're changing it. So we don't want to imitate blindly and imitate the bad things. There are some wonderful things about the Western world. And this technology is a great blessing if we are aware of it, if we know how to use it as a tool rather than, become machines and become addicted to it. So I understand your challenges, different kind of challenges. I have one kind of challenge. My students are mostly illiterate. I have trouble. I teach writing and they cannot even write one paragraph in correct English. And then I have to teach them complex stuff, thinking. So it's not easy to be a teacher, but let's not become some mechanical teaching device. And really, really listen to the student and give them what we can within our own limitations.
Yeah. Thank you, madam. The session was very wonderful.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Any more questions? Any more questions, participants?
I know it's getting late.
Yeah, thank you, madam. I thank you wholeheartedly on behalf of the Rani Chennamma University, Belagavi, from the Department of Studies in English, on behalf of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Ramachandra Gowdaji. So this was really a wonderful, wonderful session. Thank you so much for your time and
well, thank you so much for listening to me.
Namaskar.
I appreciated that very much.
We will keep in touch. Yeah, we will
stay
keep
well
in touch.
And safe, everybody. Do not take any chances, and hope to someday maybe I'll meet you in person.
Certainly meet.
Yeah,
right.
We will meet offline mode, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
You too take care, madam.
You can have that hope.
Take care. You too take care.
All right, you too.
We'll
all
call
right,
this a
then.
session.
Goodbye.
Thank you all.
Goodbye.
Thank you all for your participation. Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, now I request Pooja madam to take over.
Okay.
Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Well, that was Professor Neela.
But increase your volume.
Yeah,
please increase your volume. It's too low.
It's full volume here. It's full volume here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you, Professor Neela, for that very erudite session. It was really very interesting listening to you. Thank you, Professor Tandavgowda, for your coordinating the event so well.
Thank you.
We come to the last session of this conference, which we started early morning at 10 o'clock. I'm so happy that the number of the participants hasn't dwindled. We had full participation throughout the day, though we had lots of gaps in between, breaks in between, lunch breaks and tea breaks and other things. But still, we are really happy for your cooperation. This session was supposed to be a valedictory session, and we had our revered registrar, Professor Basavraj Padmashali, to come in and give the valedictory speech. But since he is busy with other engagements, and right now I guess he's traveling, he communicated to us that it won't be possible for him to actually join us, but he has sent his wishes. So with our Vice Chancellor Sir's blessings in the morning to begin the day, and our Registrar Sir's wishes to end it today, we are really lucky that the entire officials, the entire university is with us. The department is very happy conducting this, one international seminar. Now we come to the last part, that is the vote of thanks. to express our gratitude to all those people who have made this a reality. So I would request one more colleague of ours, Dr. Kavita Kusugal, to please take over and propose vote of thanks and wind up the session. Over to you, Kavita. Dr. Kavita Kusugal, you are there?
Yes, yes. Thank
Yeah,
you.
please.
Thank you. My sincere thanks to Professor Padmashali sir for his he has sent the message. Thank you for his valedictory words. The whole day of this conference, International Seminar on Effective English Communication Skills in the Digital Era, it was throughout the day today on 31st May 2020. The day began with the best wishes, the blessings of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Ramchandra Gowda. His blessings, his best wishes were actually they are the source of strength and encouragement to our activities, academic activities throughout the year or whenever we organize any event, is always with us as a source of strength. So the organizing committee and the department heartily thank Professor Ramchandra Gowda, our Honorable Vice Chancellor. And the conference, the seminar was inaugurated by our convener of the conference and the chairman of the Department of English, Professor Vijay Naganava. So he gave a comprehensive background to the this seminar in his inauguration speech. So my sincere thanks to Professor Naganava as well. And the keynote address was by Professor Smita Roy. It was very well structured and apt. So our team, the organizing committee and the department thank Professor Smita Roy from Osmania University, Hyderabad. Throughout the day, there were three very rich resource persons were with us and who made this the whole day a real worth spending on. They were Dr. Ajay Chaube from Uttarakhand University, Dr. Vibha Bhuth from Jodhpur University, Rajasthan, and really very spellbound again, very rich resource person from New York, Professor Neelam Bhattacharya Saxena. Really, I admired your speech, the words. Our team, hearty thank you all, the three resource persons. Thank you for making this day really worth spending on. And all the whole committee, the organizing team, and the coordinators of all the sessions, Dr. Nagaratna Parande, Mrs. Pooja Haliyan, Dr. Madhushri Kallimani, Dr. Tandav Gowda, Dr. Fayyaz Ilkal, and Dr. Kavita Kusugal, myself. The whole team has coordinated the whole day events very well, very neatly. It was very good coordinated. So my thanks to all the team. There was a team of media persons with us. Preeti Kalal of S9 TV, Prajwal Bavihar, Vidyashri Halkerimat, and Sunita Dasar. And maybe some more media persons who are with us. Our organizing committee and our whole university is indebted to their help and support to the event. Our heartfelt thanks are due to our colleagues from other departments of RCU, Dr. Basavaraj Bagade, Manjunath NK, Santosh Rajput, and Ramesh Kuri. Again, I thank them because without their help and support, they their help was very valuable and priceless, without which the seminar would not have taken place. Not only today, but since so many days they are helping us. So I really thank the whole dear team who are other than from other department there with us. Thank you, all the colleagues. Very, very important is all the participants, the teachers, research scholars, and the students across the world. Throughout they participated in interactions, they questioned, they added their points, and they added more to the event, to these sessions. So my thanks to all those participants on behalf of the department, from our chairperson of the department, the committee, and our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, and all the administrative team. I thank all the participants, all the resource persons. Once again, on behalf of the department, I thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, Professor Ramchandra Gowda, Registrar Professor Basavaraj Padmashali, Registrar Evaluation Professor Hurkadli, and Finance Officer Professor D.N. Patil, and our most beloved, our chairman of the department and convener of this event, the event of the day, our chairman, beloved chairman of the department, Professor Vijay Naganava, for their constant support and timely guidance, maybe throughout this month. Their guidance was with us. So our whole organizing committee is indebted to their guidance and all. Thank you once again to all the participants, resource persons, media persons, and whole team. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to document our gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavita madam. So, we end this day with a small announcement here. I'm very sure that all the participants are keenly waiting for the feedback forms because that is linked with your e-certificates. Let me make it very clear to you that you will not be denied your e-certificates. Be assured that we are definitely going to give it to you. But because of a small hitch today, the feedback form will be given to you in the Telegram group itself tomorrow. And as soon as you fill the feedback form, immediately the e-certificate will reach you. So please note, feedback form link will be available on the Telegram group by tomorrow. And we request you all to submit your valuable feedback and get your certificate on your mail soon after submission tomorrow. Hope this is a good day. This has been really a very, very good day for us. A lot of knowledge inputs we have received, and hopefully the trajectory of our thinking has really taken a new direction. With this, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you one and all. Thank you, ma'am.
Good night.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you,
All
ma'am.
right, thank you. Thank you.
Namaste.
I'm really
Namaste.
sorry.
Thank
I'm
you,
really
ma'am.
sorry I missed all the other talks. I
That's
would have
okay.
really liked to, but I
think you can get
appreciate.
that on. I think you can get that on YouTube. Yeah.
Oh, great, great. I will check it out.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Stay
Thank
well.
you.
Stay
Stay
well.
well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye then.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye.
ಹಲೋ ಸರ್ ಏನ್ರಿ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಲಿಂಕ್ ಹಾಕದೇನೆ ಕಳಿಸ್ಬಿಟ್ರಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಯಾವ ಒಬ್ಬ ಹುಡುಗ